order at 5:30 p.m. Introduction of amendments to the agenda. Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I have two amendments to the agenda. The first one is respecting item 7.13. So in the second part of the resolution, it provides the size of a shelter. The number in the resolution was incorrect. The number should be 30 by 40 by 18. And the second item is an addition to the agenda, item 7.14, the appointment of an acting mayor. And a copy of that resolution was circulated to council prior to the meeting.
Thank you. No further amendments?
No, sir.
Then I'll ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended for the July 17th meeting. Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. Declarations of pecuniary interest.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I have one. Councillor Timpson has declared interest in item number 7.13, Friends of Cedar Bay lease agreement. Councillor Timpson is on the board of directors of the Friends of Cedar Bay.
Thank you. Adoption of minutes. Motion to adopt the minutes from the following meetings. The regular council June 19th minutes. That the minutes be adopted, approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Lego. All in favor? Carried. Motion to receive the minutes from outside agencies and boards. The 2019 April 18th KDSB Board of Directors meeting minutes and the 2019 May 9th KDSB Board of Director meeting minutes. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Timpson. All in favor? Carried. And motion to receive the minutes of the following municipal boards, commissions, and committees. 2019-03-28 Hudson Advisory Committee minutes. 2019-02-27 Economic Development Committee meeting minutes. 2019-03-20 EDC minutes. 2019-04-17 EDC minutes. And finally, 2019-05-22 Economic Development Committee minutes. Moved by Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Fanlon. All in favor? Carried. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. So staff report 7.1, I'll lift that for resolution. And the accommodation tax, I'll lift that for discussion. Vacant unit rebate policy and vacant excess land subclass discount. Item 7.4, Community Transportation Grant Program. Councillor Timpson. Item 7.5, Hydroelectric Future Load Planning. Item 7.6, Strategic Economic Infrastructure Fund, Airport Water Systems. Councillor Timpson. Item 7.7, FCM Green Municipal Fund, Echo Village Feasibility. Councillor Timpson. Innovation Station, item 7.8. Councillor Timpson. Northern Community Capacity Building, Bigwood Lake Property, 7.9. 7.10, amendment to agreement with Drayton Disposal Services for Blue Box Materials Collection and Disposition. Councillor Timpson. 7.11, Silicote Wastewater Treatment Plant Upgrade. This has an option on it, I believe, so we will lift this one. 7.12, Strategic Plan. 7.13, Friends of Cedar Bay Lease Agreement. 7.14, Acting Mayor. Mr. Timpson?
Well, I just have a question. I didn't receive that report.
It's on the.
Is it on our?
The clerk just said he put it on our table. It's just before the meeting. He
Oh,
just,
okay. Okay.
are you lifting it?
No, it's fine.
So, items requiring separate
Cool.
discussion. I have item 7.1, item 7.2, item 7.4. Oh, phone's going off, water spilling, oh dear. Thanks, Jordan. So I'll just start again, 7.1, 7.2, 7.4, 7.6, 7.7, 7.8, 7.10, 7.11, 7 point, that's it, 7.11 is the last one.
13.
Sorry?
13?
Nobody lifted it.
Well, I declared interest on that.
If it, oh, okay, so, yep, you're right. We have to lift 13 as there's a conflict of interest on it for separate clerk?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, two options. We can either lift it for separate discussion, or Councillor Timpson can choose not to vote on the adoption of items not requiring separate discussion.
All the items.
So one or the other.
Okay. What's easier?
Probably more time efficient to just not vote on the
Okay.
items not requiring separate discussion.
Okay.
You good with that, Councillor Timpson?
Or I'll just not vote on it. I'll take his advice on that.
So adoption of items not requiring separate discussion. The council approves the following recommendations. 7.3, 7.5, 7.9, 7.12, 7.13, and 7.14. Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. We'll now go to delegations. So we do have one delegation tonight. Grant Thornton LLP, presentation of the 2018 financial statements. So I'll turn the table over to you.
All right. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is that time of year where we come in and present our audit results and the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2018. Again, the purpose of this is for us to go through and comply with our professional standards to report back to those in charge of governance. That's who you are as members of council. But it also covers off your responsibilities with regards to financial reporting, gives you an opportunity to provide oversight over the audit process and the financial statements themselves. You should have two documents, one titled Report to Members of Council, Audit Strategy and Results, and the other one is a copy of the draft financial statements. I'm going to take you through the audit results and audit strategy first. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail in the report. By all means, if you have questions, you're more than welcome to ask them. I'll do my best to answer those questions. If you turn to page 1, the executive summary, again, talk about the purpose of this report is to cover off both our standards and your requirements to perform some due diligence over the process. The audit is complete a while ago. There are obviously a few things outstanding. Most significant being the signed management representation letter. We asked management to sign that the date the financial statements are approved by council. The approval of the financial statements by council, these are your statements. So we require that you approve them first and then we sign our audit report. And then procedures regarding subsequent events, just making sure that nothing's happened between the time that we finished our audit of the field and today's date. Really, to be quite honest, we're looking for legal concerns, lawsuits, those kinds of things that would impact the financial statements today. We don't expect there to be any of those. Audit risks and results, just some significant transactions. Obviously, your capital program is significant. During the year ended December 31st, 2018, you spent about $4.5 million in capital, and obviously had to fund that capital through were some disposals, and you'll hear about those in the financial statements as well. The Normal Love Daycare was a significant disposal, as well as some heavy equipment and some other equipment that was disposed of as well. Federal gas tax, you receive federal gas tax money every year, and it's sitting in deferred revenue. You use that revenue to finance some of those capital assets, so we identified it there. There is a balance at the end of the year of about $244,000 that's being carried into the future, and you'll see that again when you look at the financial statements. The landfill liability is always a significant liability on the financial statements. A lot of assumptions that go around that liability. We'll talk about it when we get into the financial statements as well. With regards to significant risks around the audit process, a number of years ago, our professional standards had to identify and deal with fraud in an audit world. So there's this concept of fraud or presumed risk of fraud around revenue recognition. So we have to make sure that we cover off that risk when we come in to do or perform an audit. Obviously, taxation revenue is a big revenue stream, so we spend a lot of time looking at that. The more significant area from a fraud perspective is grants. Making sure that grants are properly earned, that management isn't reallocating expenses or double counting expenses when they're applying for grants. So we'll talk about that later on as well. We didn't identify any of that in the financial statements. The fraud risks from management override. You are a small organization, and you'll see this when we talk about our internal control findings. We have a concern around segregation of duties, and we're not going to suggest that you go out and hire a bunch of people to cover off that risk. But there are a lot of compensating controls, one of which is, council itself. So when management presents financial information to council, we encourage you to ask questions and make sure that you feel comfortable with what's being presented to you. And in most cases, if there is an error in those financial statements, you'll see it when you get your financial reports. Fraud and illegal acts. So just for the new members of council, there are two types of fraud. There's a traditional fraud that you read in the paper where someone actually steals from an organization. It's very hard to identify that if there's collusion. So if a number of members of management are working together and trying to hide things, it's hard to find them. We didn't identify any of that. The other area of fraud that is more prevalent in organizations like yours is this concept of financial reporting fraud, where management knowingly misstates financial information in order to benefit the community. And we have to make sure that that doesn't happen either. We designed a bunch of procedures to cover off that risk, and we didn't identify any fraud risks this year or fraud happening. Dealing with accounting estimates, why this is important is because we don't have an invoice to go to. I mean, there's a lot of assumptions that come into coming up with estimates. The most significant estimates in your financial statements are allowance for doubtful accounts. So if management believes that it's highly unlikely that they're going to be able to collect on a receivable that's set up, then they'll allow for it. We spend a lot of time looking at the receivables, making sure that what's still there is collectible. It doesn't mean management's not going to pursue them. It just means that they're being prudent in their assessment of whether those are going to be collectible. So the allowance for doubtful accounts is there. Also, the landfill liability. There's a lot of assumptions that go into coming up with that calculation and that liability. Again, we spend a lot of time looking at the assumptions that go behind that calculation and feel that they're reasonable. You see that the other areas of focus identified there, legal and regulatory issues. You're in compliance with all your legal and regulatory issues. Cooperation during the audit. We received excellent cooperation again from the team here, and it makes the audit go much more smoothly when that happens. With regards to adjustments and unrecorded misstatements, during the course of the audit, we always identify differences that we sit down with management and go through to make sure that those adjustments are made in the financial statements. That's no different this year. So we've listed some of the adjustments that we've worked with management to put through the financial statements. At the end of the day, though, all the differences that we did identify were corrected in the financial statements. So there's nothing outstanding this year. As I mentioned, with regards to internal controls, we do have to gain an understanding of your internal controls, and we test the ones that we want to rely on. And then we look for opportunities where we can implement some best practices in your organization. So there's a formal letter that's part of the package that deals with the internal control issues, but I'm going to highlight it here for you. The first one is segregation of duties. We talked about it. You are a small organization, and not suggesting you won't hire a bunch of people, right? There's a lot of good compensating controls where, again, council, we can review financial information to make sure that that is being done on a timely fashion. Reconciling accounts, management's come a long way in making sure that these reconciliations are happening in a more timely fashion. There was a time where they were done just at year-end. There are some that are still done at year-end, and some that are being done throughout the year as well, which means the year-end process will that much more efficient. The landfill liability, it is best practice to have a study done. I think you do have a study done in 2019, so we're just highlighting that. Payroll master files, again, one of those areas where you've come a long way, but there's still some improvement to be done. There's controls around new hires and terminations and all of that. One of the things that we're recommending is that management review payroll master files at least on an annual basis to make sure that people are getting paid the right amount. Throughout the course of our audit, we didn't identify any issues where people were getting paid something that shouldn't have gotten paid, but it's good practice hygiene to make sure that we look at these things on a regular basis. And finally, when we go through the financial statements, you'll notice that the reserve funds are not fully funded. The bank accounts that are there are not there to support the value of your reserve funds. And we'll talk about the differences between reserves and reserve funds when we get to the financial statements and why this is important. One of the hot topics in the municipal sector and in a lot of sectors nowadays is the concept of cybersecurity. And we've attached some documents in this report around cybersecurity. You only hear a few of the actual breaches in the paper, those ones that go public. A lot of these cybersecurity attacks are sort of done behind closed doors, and they don't get presented in news reports or out in public. There's a lot of issues around cybersecurity, and you see some of that in the paper. We have clients in Thunder Bay that had to deal with these kinds of issues. What we're recommending is that you look at your IT system and make sure that as an organization you're protected against cyber attacks. And keeping in mind that cybersecurity is continuous improvement. You might be okay today, but there might be someone in Yugoslavia coming up with a solution to hack into your system tomorrow. So it's one of those things that it's just, again, best practices. We had a discussion with management. One of the things that we recommend is there's strength in numbers. There's a number of municipalities in Northern Ontario that are going to have to deal with the same issue. There's a role to play in bringing them all together, and you have to hire someone to come up with some best practices on how you do this. Every municipality is going to have to deal with this, so it's important to take a look at it. With regards to independence, we have to confirm that we are independent of the organization. As far as technical updates, I'm not going to get into a lot of the technical changes that are happening in our role. Just want to talk to council a little bit about the role we have with management. We work with management on a regular basis, and we'll continue to do that to make sure that any changes that happen to our standards, whether it be accounting or auditing standards, are reflected in our financial statements. All the fun stuff. So the overview or the audit approach. Really the role of council, and I talked about it briefly, is to set the tone for the organization, emphasizing honesty and ethical behavior, and to oversee the financial reporting process, including the audit process. The role of management, so the financial statements that we present to you today are actually management's responsibilities. They are the ones that produce the numbers, and we actually audit them. Our role is to provide an opinion on the financial statements based on our audit, make sure that our audit complies with the standards that are set by CPA Canada. The approach itself, again, I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of audit jargon, but the approach that, in very simple terms, we come in based on our knowledge of your organization and the municipal sector. We spend a lot of time assessing where the risk of a material error can take place, and then we tailor our procedures to cover off that risk. So I often use the analogy of the fish with a fish on it. So we spend a lot of time at the front end of the audit assessing, where can an error take place in your organization, and make sure we tailor procedures to cover that off. And then obviously, what we're here for tonight is including on the financial statements, reporting back to you. You'll hear me mention materiality, and we talk about it in our audit report as well. Materiality is just a number. Okay? So it's a number that's used for three things in particular. One is it's the first step sampling, so how much testing are we actually going to do around transactions? Depending on materiality, that'll drive how much testing we do. And finally, once we complete the audit, it's taking a look at overall financial statements and making sure that they're not misleading in any way, shape, or form. And materiality sort of weighs in on that. So if we do find errors and management doesn't want to make the adjustment for those errors, then we fall back to materiality and say, how large is it? How's it going to impact the users of the financial statements? And does it impact our audit report back to you? So fraud and fraud risk factors we talked about. I'd like you to turn to Appendix B if you can. So Appendix B on page 12 of your document is the independent auditor's report. And this is what you'll see in the financial statements as well. So those of you that were members of council in the past or have seen audit reports in the past, this report looks different because their standards have changed. At the end of the day, it's still a clean audit opinion. Who we address our audit report to is the members of council, inhabitants, and ratepayers. That's who we work for. We work for you. We have a great relationship with management, but at the end of the day, we work for council. We never forget. We've audited the financial statements that are attached to the audit report, and in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the township for the municipality as at December 31st, 2018, and is in accordance with Canadian Public Sector accounting standards. Again, the basis of our opinion, we audit in accordance with the standards, and we believe that we've obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence to support our audit opinion. Management is responsible for the financial statements as well as the internal controls that feed into the financial statements. And the audit report goes on to state that those charged with governance are responsible for overseeing the municipality's financial reporting process. That's you as council. On the next page are the auditor's responsibilities. So again, it's to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. It's not absolute assurance. So, in order to get absolute assurance, we have to look at every transaction, and that's cost prohibitive. And we have to be year round. That just doesn't happen. But over and above auditing financial statements, some of the things that we have to be aware of and top of mind is obviously we have to exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism. Even though we have a good relationship with management, we have to be skeptical of what is given to us on a regular basis, so throughout the whole audit process. Some of the highlights, as I said, we have to assess the risk of material misstatement, design procedures to cover that off. We have to understand the internal control structure and test those controls that we're going to rely on from an audit evidence perspective. We have to look at the appropriateness of the accounting policies that management uses or the organization uses and see if they're appropriate under the circumstances. Evaluating the going concern assumption. So obviously these financial statements are under the assumption that you're going to continue into the future. There have been municipalities that have gone bankrupt, and we have to be aware of that as well. So management is responsible for taking the first cut at that assessment, but we have obviously audit that as well. The overall presentation of the financial statements. So we have to look at that. And then finally, because these are consolidated statements, we have to make sure that the organizations that are consolidated into these financial statements, particularly your library, that we've audited those numbers as well. Then we've included a copy of the management representation letter. Appendix E is again some more information on cybersecurity that you can go through, and if you have any questions, by all means, either reach out to management or reach out to us directly. And then the rest of the document are the appendices with regards to the audit and accounting developments. And again, we'll work with management to make sure that any changes are reflected in your financial statements. Any questions on the audit results before we jump into the financial statements?
Council?
So the second document that you have in front of you are the financial statements themselves. Behind the cover page, the statement of administrative responsibility. We ask that the mayor and the CAO sign off on this. Again, acknowledging that they're responsible for these financial statements. Page 1 and 2 are is the independent auditor's report that I walked you through. So it's, again, it's what we consider a clean audit. So now we get to page 3, which are the numbers, and I think that's what council really wants to talk about over here. So the financial statements are done at your year end, which is December 31st, 2018. So the consolidated statement of financial position is really a snapshot on that So at December 31st, 2018, you had cash in the bank, $5.9 million. This is all the cash you had, including the money you had in your reserve funds, the money you had in your operating checking accounts, as well as the money that the library had in the bank. The investments at the end of the year are up slightly. The investments are up mainly because of interest on those investments. Your taxes receivable balance of $1.3 million, very consistent year over year. From an audit perspective, we like seeing consistency because that says that nothing really crazy has happened during the year. It's the exciting part of auditing. User charges receivable represents your water receivable at December 31st, and again, very consistent year over year. Your accounts receivable are down about $700,000 from last year, so this is money that's owed to the municipality. At the end of last year, there was a lot of more activity from a grants perspective, especially with the airport. The capital work that was done there, there was money that was owed to the municipality. That was collected during the year, and at the end of the year, December 31st, 2018, the amounts owed to the municipality because the capital program was winding up or lessened in a lesser amount in 2018. Therefore, the balance in receivables was lower. So it has a correlation between how much money was spent during the year versus what's still owing to you at the end of the year. Your inventories for resale, so this represents the fuel inventory at the airport. And then your investment in the government business enterprise of $3.1 million. This is your investment in Hydro. So the increase in your investment is what they earned during the year, less the dividend that was declared at the time. So your total financial assets are just over $15 million. The liabilities, meaning what you owed to others. So your accounts payable and accrued liabilities at the end of the year of $2.4 million, down from 4.4 last year. Again, your capital program at the end of 2017 was much more active than it was at the end of 2018. So there's much more money owed to third parties at the end of last year than it was this year. So deferred revenue, and there's some notes that give you a little bit more detail on these numbers, but deferred revenue, for the most part, is gas tax and some restricted donations that you receive of $474,000. So this is money that you've received but you haven't earned yet. So it's sitting in your bank account, but you have to actually spend the money in order to earn it. There's restrictions around it. So that's what that 474 is made up of. You have debt at the end of the year of just under $21 million, so that's up from last year. And this is made up of two balances, actually. It's new debt that you went out and borrowed on. The number of capital projects, again, the most significant one would be the airport that you'll see in the notes of the financial statements when we get there. But also the repayments. I mean, you've made payments down on this debt. So you've added just over $4 million of new debt, but you've actually made payments against that. So the debt has come down, but also gone up because you've added new debt to it. Landfill closure and post-closure liability. So this is a projection as to what the liability will be in the future in today's dollars. So $356,000 there. Employee benefits, the employee benefit liability, big chunk of this is sick leave and vacation entitlements that employees are entitled to. So total liabilities of just under $25 million. And then your net debt of about $9.4 million. Your non-financial assets, so your tangible capital assets made up of roads, buildings, the airport, all that kind of stuff, just under $76 million. And then prepaid expenses, including fees, software licenses, insurance, that kind of stuff. So your non-financial assets, just over $76 million. And then your accumulated surplus is $66 million. And there's a schedule I'll walk you through to tell you what makes that balance. On the next page is your statement of operations. So what I'm going to propose to do here is actually compare what your actual results were to what you budgeted. So when you come up with your budget, that's your plan for the year. So we want to make sure that any variance from budget is explainable or explained. So in taxation revenue, you had budgeted $10.7 million. Your actual came in at $10.6 million. You do budget for supplementary taxes, and the amount of supplementary taxes was approximately $100,000 less than what you budgeted. And what supplementary taxes are is, quick example is someone builds a garage and it hasn't been assessed yet from MPAC, but the permit was given. MPAC comes in partway through the year, assesses that garage, sends the ratepayer, well, he sends information to you guys, you send the ratepayer an invoice for taxes outstanding. You don't know what those balances are when you budget, so there's a bit of a guess there every year. Sometimes it's over budget, sometimes it's under budget. For this year, it was under budget. Your user charges, so your water and sewer billings, very comparable to budget and the prior year at $2.7 million. Your other fees and service charges, significantly higher than what you budgeted. And what's really driving this is the airport improvement fee. So the actual airport improvement fee revenue was significantly higher than what you budgeted. And that's just activity in the airport. And you'll see that again when we talk about fuel sales at the airport as well. That's with regards to your government transfers, Government of Canada, so when the budget was struck last year, the expectation was that more work was going to happen at the airport than actually happened. The project was further along when the budget was struck. So we had budgeted to receive grant revenue, but because the project was further along, that revenue was recognized last year in the financial statements. So between the Airport Build Canada grant that was budgeted for but not received, and the waterfront development project that was happened later in the year, that's why you didn't achieve the budget there. But you also didn't achieve the expense either. So it doesn't really impact your surplus or deficit. Province of Ontario grant is under budget. Again, the big chunk of that is directly related to the waterfront development project and the fact that it really didn't proceed as council had planned when they struck the budget. In the other revenue category, your investment income, you ended up with more cash in the bank. You also don't budget for the cash you have to support your reserve funds. You see in the notes there's about $3 million of cash set aside to support your reserve funds. And the reason why you don't budget for that is that money really goes straight into your reserves, sort of reserve funds. It's not really used to help operations. So management takes the position that they don't budget for it, and this is common with municipalities, that they don't budget for reserve fund interest in their cash balances. Penalties, fines, and late payment charges, $255,000 up from budget. This is one of those revenue line items that, as council, you like the revenue, but you don't want to see it, because that means people aren't paying their taxes, right? So, again, this is a number that we want to keep as low as possible, because that means people are paying their taxes. Sale of fuel, you'll see that that's up $2.5 million, and this is just fuel sales at the airport. And again, we saw the airport improvement fee up, we also see sale of fuel as well. Fundraising and donations, pretty consistent year over year. The other municipalities is the ritual offenses, or POA, that Dryden administers on your behalf. There's some cost sharing that happens there, so that came in under budget this year as well. Licenses, permits, and rents, very comparable year over year. The income from hydro, $300,235. You'll see that in the notes to the financial statements, so that's what we earned. And then with regards to other revenue, about $140,000 over budget. That's directly attributable to land sales. So you sold Nora Love, you also sold that's reflected. So total revenue of just under $36 million. On the expenditure side, again, comparing your budget to your actual numbers. So in general government, you budgeted just under 2.9, you came in at just over $3 million in expenditures. There was a cleanup of a property that took place that wasn't budgeted for. There was also some additional HR costs in the clerk's office and in human resources that wasn't budgeted for. Protection of persons and property, you're under budget. There was a rebate in leasing costs. We think it related to last year that flowed through this year. So your actual 2018 leasing costs came in on budget, almost identical to budget. The reason why it's lower is because you didn't receive this rebate. Transportation services, this is where the airport fuel costs are. So obviously you had more sales, you have to buy that fuel, and that's where the airport fuel costs are put. In the environmental services, you're under budget. There's a number of small variances here. There's not one or two things that sort of jumped off the page. There's a lot of little things that add up because this category is regards to health services, you were over budget. Part of why this is there is you budget for facilities all in your planning and development, and then those costs get allocated based on where those people spend their time. So, example is if someone spends their time at the ULM clinic, it gets charged to that clinic. It's budgeted in one line item, but it gets distributed elsewhere. So that's why you're over budget here, is because those costs were allocated to health. And you look at planning and development, you're under budget. So it's a bit of a wash. Overall, your facilities budget came in on budget. It's just how it gets distributed amongst your various accounts. Social and family services is under budget. So when you sold the Nora Love daycare, the operations ceased there as well. So there's a lot of savings on sort of the delivery of that service. So that service wasn't being delivered by the township or the municipality, therefore you had those savings. Your social housing, you know what that number is going into the year, so you budgeted exactly what you had to pay out. Recreation and culture, significantly over budget. Three categories in particular: your hydro costs were over budget, your contracted services were over budget, and your supplies and equipment were over budget. Management knew this throughout the year, put in some corrective action as best they could to try to minimize that. But at the end of the year, you were still over budget by the numbers you see there. And then planning and development. As I said, planning and development, you had a budget of 1.1 million change. You came in at 900,000. A lot of that is, like I said, the reallocation of some of the expenses that are in that category. But there's also some other things that happened. For example, we had budgeted for an economic development assistant. That person wasn't hired. So there's some savings there as well. So overall, you had expenditures of just over $33.5 million. And then your surplus from a PSAP perspective, I'll talk about what that means in a few minutes, is about $2.3 million. You had a loss on the disposal of assets. So when you go into those buildings, you recognize the revenue, but the asset was written off, whatever was left on the books. So that write-off was $442. So overall, your annual surplus is just under $2 million at $1.9. Your accumulated surplus coming into the year total was $64.6 million, and that's how we come up with the $66.6 million as your ending surplus balance. So before we go through any more of the statements, what I'm going to ask you to do, is because I'm sure all you're asking what makes up the $66 million, because I would be if I were you. If you turn to page 25 of the financial statements, Schedule 1 breaks out with that $66 million is made up. So, at the end of December 2018, you had a general fund deficit. So the general fund is made up of your operating fund, your operations, as well as your capital fund. Your capital fund being what's unfinanced at the end of the year, of $3.1 million. So that $3.1 million, there's been a number of projects that have been carried forward. But that $3.1 million is made up of two balances. It's made up of an operating fund surplus of approximately $250,000. And it's made up of a capital fund deficit, meaning that you haven't financed that capital fund yet, of about $3.4 million. So the net of those two amounts is the 3.1 that you see there. Management has a plan on how they're going to finance the bulk of those capital projects. So whether it be long-term debt or other means, there's a plan on how to fund that deficit. Your investment in tangible capital assets, just under $76 million that we talked about. Your unfunded liabilities. So all of those balances you see there, whether it be debt, the employee future benefits, home for the aged, landfill closure, those will all be levied in the future or paid for in the future. So you're not levying a ratepayer today for that balance. Therefore, it's a liability that you're going to have to pay in the future. So that comes out of your surpluses. So your total surplus is just under 51 million. And then your reserves and reserve funds. So reserves set aside by council of 8.2 million, and reserve funds set aside by council of $4.3 million. So for the new members of council, the difference between a reserve fund and a reserve is a reserve fund actually has assets to support it. In most cases, cash, right? Because they're actually an allocation of cash to support those reserve funds. A reserve, on the other hand, is just an allocation of equity. So for those of you that own or operate businesses, it would be retained earnings. Those reserves are tied up in your assets, in your accounts receivable, in your inventories, in your investments. All of that is tied up in your reserves, and that's how they're funded and financed. Okay. And then your net equity in the hydro of $3.1 million, and that's how you come up with the accumulated surplus of $66 million. Okay. So it's all like council has $66 million to go spend. If we flip back to page 6, so page 6 is a continuity of your net debt balance. So, you started the year with net debt of over $10 million, you got it down to $9.4 million. And the biggest challenge you have with net debt is the fact that you do have the airport. The airport carries a significant amount of debt. And we'll see that when we get into those are the financial statements. That debt's all going to get paid by the airport. So it's not falling onto the ratepayer, right? But it is still a debt of the municipality. So that's why you see a net debt balance there. It's not just the airport, there's other things in there we'll talk about it, but the airport is a big line. Page 7 is your statement of cash flow, and it just reconciles your opening and closing cash. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Note 8, right through, page 8 right through to page 13 are the notes to the financial statements. From council's perspective and from the user of the financial statements perspective, they don't want to see changes. That's important because you want to see consistency, and there have been no changes to your accounting policy this year. So on page 13, note 2, the trust funds administered by the municipality of $226,000. So the perpetual care fund, the cemetery perpetual care fund, it's not an asset of the municipality. You administer it, it doesn't belong to you. So this note basically outlines that, and it says there's $226,000 of value there to support your trust funds. Note 3 is just the breakdown of your cash and cash equivalents, but the verbiage below the chart there does go on to state that the municipality does have an operating line of credit available to it of $4 million, of which you haven't touched it here. So there's no money outstanding on the line of credit. Your investments are all invested in GICs, earning 0.85%. We had a discussion with management. There's likely better vehicles to gain better interest rates than 0.85%, especially now that you have built up some of your reserve fund balance. And you see that. So when you have $3 million supporting reserve funds, it's our opinion that you can probably get a better rate of return than 0.85%. Taxes and user charges receivable. So again, the gross amount of your taxes is listed there, as well as the allowance set up against those taxes. Very consistent year over year. And also your water receivables are disclosed. Note 6 is the summary of the hydro's financial information. It's a requirement that we disclose this in the statements. Again, as I said, if you look at the bottom part of that page, the schedule, the net income from the hydro was over $300,000, but $215,000 is a dividend declared in hydro to the municipality. So the total increase in their the net assets or your investment was the net of those two. So it's now at $3.1 million. The municipality has guaranteed the net of the hydro, and at year end that's $1.1 million. So if something were to happen to hydro, municipality would probably Note 7 is just a continuity of your deferred revenue. Note 8 is a fact that we purchased 8 homers, and $539,000 was paid to homers this year on behalf of your employees. Note 9 is a schedule of the debt of the municipality, broken out by each loan. So there's a couple of new loans that you see there on page 16. If you flip to page 17, you'll see the Sioux Lookout Airport construction loan there of just over $6 million. Okay. So the total is just under $21 million. We had a discussion with management. So the total airport debt that's included included in the $21 million. So not just the construction loan, but all the other loans that are outstanding for the airport. It's just under $8 million, so $7.9 million. There's about $5.5 million of loans that are supported by user fees. So water, sewer, those types of loans that the user fees will pay off those loans. And then there's about $7.5 million that's supported by taxation, by the ratepayers themselves. So, you know, some, whether it's sidewalks, things that aren't covered by user fees, buildings, graders, equipment, that kind of stuff. That doesn't fall in the user charge category. The debt that's supported by the ratepayers. Note 10, the landfill closure and post-closure. Again, a lot of verbiage around the assumptions that are maybe coming up with that calculation. At the end of the day, it's estimated you have 27 years left of life on the landfill site. And at that point, you know, so you're going to have to cap and monitor it for a number of years after that. The employee future benefits broken out by the various categories. The vested and non-vested sick leave, vacation, bank stats, and post-employment benefits, all listed there. Just giving you more information on what makes up that balance. Note 12 is your tangible capital assets on page 19, broken out by category. One of the highlights is the assets under construction of $18 million. The bulk of that is the airport in 2019, and the project is complete, and that'll get distributed amongst all the other categories. Note 13 tells you what's included in each of the categories, whether it's general government, protection of persons and property, etc. Those categories are directed to you by Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. It's how your financial information return is structured. That's why your financial statements are structured this way. Note 14 is a continuity of the reserves and reserve funds. Note 15 I want to highlight because it is a good news story. So as far as designated assets, you know, you've got $4.3 million of reserve funds. Last year you had 2.9 or almost $3 million of reserve funds. This year, you've got $3.1 million of cash in the bank to support the $4 million of reserve funds. Last year you only had 1.2. So management's going through the exercise of replenishing those reserve funds, making sure that they have cash to support them, which is what they should have. Note 16, the budget figures. When you look at the financial statements, the face of the financial statements, it looked like you approved an unbalanced budget. It's not true. You do approve a balanced budget, so you approve the budget of $48 million. Then what we do is we come in, and because public sector accounting board standards, the accounting around that is a little bit different. So capital assets get capitalized, whereas you would expense them. Depreciation, you don't budget for depreciation, but we have to put depreciation on the financial statements. Transfers to and from reserve funds, you count it as revenue and expenses. We can't do that under our standards. So what we do is we adjust your budget for all of that kind of stuff. So when you look at the budget, it's actually comparable. If we didn't do that, the budget would look really odd compared to your actual figures. So this just reconciles that so the reader of the financial statements knows what adjustments we're making. The loan guarantee for hydro, we talked about that. Sitting there at $1.1 million. That is the financial statements. We talked about Schedule 1. Schedule 2 is just a breakdown of your tangible capital assets by various categories. And really the highlight here is the cost, what the municipality actually wrote the check for to pay for all the assets since the beginning of time is roughly $124 million. And there's been depreciation on that of about $47 million. That's how we come up with the $76 million approximately that's on the financial statements. Just for council's perspective, this isn't the fair market value of your assets, it's what you paid. Right? So it's hard to know when someone would pay for a road with water, sewer, and all that kind of stuff. And then finally, the Schedule 3 is your schedule of segmented disclosure. It is a requirement that we include this here. So as I said, you know, your financial statements are structured by general government, protection of persons and property, transportation services. This schedule breaks it out, still in those categories, but it includes where the revenue and expenses are coming from. So the salaries and wages, long-term debt charges, contracted services, rent, etc. So it gives you a little bit more information on what's driving some of those numbers. tried going through that as informatively and quickly as possible. Some members of the audience bobbing their heads there. Okay. Are there any questions on the financial statements?
Councillor Timpson.
Yes, is this working?
Yep.
Okay. Presumably the old landfill is paid for, done, closed up, correct?
The old landfill is, I believe there's still some monitoring costs on it.
Okay, all right, I just wasn't sure of that. And secondly, in the reserve fund part, we have $8 million in reserves. Is that rainy day money, or is that money for our ongoing operations?
All of your reserves and reserve funds are designated for a purpose. So it's not really rainy day money. The money has been set aside for a purpose, whether it's capital infrastructure, whether it's whatever. There's a purpose.
So do we have any rainy day money anywhere? So it's essentially, the reserves are probably designated for operations, but not, the reserve money is not tied into anything specific as reserve funds are, correct?
Well, they're both tied, they both have a purpose. The only reserve that's there for operations will be your working capital reserve. And the working capital reserve is there to help your day-to-day operations. Because you have revenue of $1 sitting in accounts receivable. So you need to have your working capital reserve to help finance your day-to-day operations. And that's common with municipalities across Ontario. They all have working capital reserves.
Okay.
Further questions, council? Just further for that, the line of, we have a line of credit, or access to a line of credit of $4 million, which is in effect a rainy day reserve, right?
There is one thing that I didn't talk about, and it wasn't intentional, I just remembered. Actually, I wrote a note and I saw it as I was going through it. So the $250,000 operating fund surplus that you have, there was a bylaw set up by council a number of years ago where any land sales gets transferred to, I can't remember the reserve fund. Land Development Reserve Fund. So there was $215,000 of land sales this year that are included in that $250,000. Right now, that money has not been transferred to the reserve fund. So I don't know if this region wants to have a discussion on that, but that's, the proposal would be that that money gets transferred to the reserve fund and out of the $215,000 anyways, out of the surplus balance. So there'll be an adjustment for financial statements. There is a bylaw already set up for it.
Do we need to pass a motion on that? Or I think
so.
the bylaw is in place. Yeah. It would be just a management accounting practice, right? Bookkeeping.
And we apologize, we had the discussion today and we noticed that we had missed that making the adjustment for the financial statements.
CEO?
So what that would mean is, once we do that adjustment, the financial statements would be slightly adjusted to reflect that transfer into reserves.
So as we approve, receive whatever the wording is for the financial statements, we're acknowledging that minor change will take place.
Overall, you're at
Okay.
Councillor Timpson.
I wonder if you wouldn't mind just repeating the difference between reserves and reserve funds, because my understanding was that the reserve funds were like, they were the specific one, but the reserves were a little looser. I always, I'm really quite confused on this now. It sounds like you're saying reserves are specified for what they're for. I thought that was what reserve funds were for.
Yeah, the only difference between the reserves and reserve funds is the assets supporting it.
Uh-huh.
So there's cash supporting the reserve funds, whereas a reserve is the money is tied up in your balance sheet. There still has to be a reason for the reserve fund to exist. The council can't just call it a rainy day. It has to have a purpose. The rainy day fund can be called something different.
It's in fact contrary to the municipal act for us to finance with a contingency fund or a rainy day. We're not permitted to do that. Is that correct?
My understanding is municipalities, the reality of municipalities have done that through setting up, like I said, rate stabilization reserves. Like that one keeps coming to my head because it's one of those reserves that are set aside. Council can use it to help balance off taxation. Or if they have a big write-off one year, they can use some of that reserve money to help balance the impact of a write-off, a significant write-off.
So in the budget process this year, we reduced the amount that we transferred to reserves. So which reserve funds did we not transfer to then?
Treasurer? Yeah.
There are, this is 2018, not 2019.
Right.
We discussed 2018 financial statements, it was 2019 that we didn't transfer to all the reserves and reserve funds, and it was through the Public Works.
Through the Public Works designation?
Equipment,
Okay. All right, thank you.
that's for 2019, though, it's not in this.
Yeah, I know, I realize that. I'm just trying to get in my head the difference between the two. I thought I had it, but I guess I didn't. Okay.
Further questions, council? Councillor Cassidy.
Just with regards to our debt and the listing there, I see a lot of stuff is is either due or maturing like around 2020. How well or like how much? I know you said like 7.5 million of that is on the taxpayer. How much of the stuff that's maturing in 2020 makes up, I guess, that 7.5 that's on the taxpayer right now?
I don't know the answer to
Don't know. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Further questions, council? Any further comments or?
If not, thank
Thank you
you very much.
very much for your presentation. So we'll go to item 7.1, which is the consolidated financial statements. The council adopts the year ending December 31st, 2018 municipal consolidated audited financial statements as presented by Grant Thornton at the July 17th, 2019 regular council meeting. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Fenelon. Any further discussion, council? Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I feel that the letter to council that is included in this one is one of the most important parts of this process. And I'm brought back to previous letters that concerning reserves and the reserve funds over the previous years that we missed it. And having just gotten this tonight, I would like to defer the acceptance of the report because I would like to be able to read this. It's quite long, and there's 2 letters in here which I would like to read in detail. So I would like to see this deferred for a few days, possibly added to a special meeting or something, but I would like to have had this earlier.
Further discussion, council?
Was there a reason why this wasn't distributed earlier?
CAO? Can we defer to the auditor? Mr. Lopez, do you have?
The package itself, why was it late getting up?
No,
Oh, this one.
There's no real intent to keep it behind. It was just a matter of just finalizing everything, making sure that it was as clean a copy as possible for the meeting. So going forward, we can definitely have it ahead of time.
are there any, if council agreed with Councillor Timpson's suggestion, are there any impacts to delaying it in a month? CIO? Further discussion, council? And then I'll call the motion that's on the floor, that we adopt the year-end financial statements for 2018. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 7.2, municipal accommodation tax overview. Am I introducing this with the statement, but not, it's not a motion? I don't need to move and second, or? I do, yeah, okay. The council provides direction to staff respecting the imposition of a municipal accommodation tax on the purchase of transient accommodations in the municipality of Sioux-Lookout. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Famlin, seconded by Councillor Bath. So this item comes from previous council to this council, and at that time, I think the last direction to staff was to do some further consultation, investigation, and come back to council with the new council with a report, which staff has done. It seems to me at this time that I think we have a few decisions to make. One is to give direction to staff, and the first would be, what is the extent of imposition of this tax? What sectors are to be included or not included in the tax would be key. And then, having decided what sectors aren't included, if that's a decision that we exclude some and consider others for imposition, the amount obviously, and within those sectors that are considered, how would the implementation work, and is there any further work necessary? So when I look at the reports that we've received and the discussions, the information we've had, I'm going to propose to council that in terms of the sectors that we, and I'm just proposing this to initiate the discussion, that we exclude the tourist outfitters, tourist camps from the municipal accommodation tax, and only consider hotels, hostels, bed and breakfasts, Airbnbs, those three sectors. And in fact, consider them. I'm not saying that we would impose it, but I'm saying I propose that we exclude the tourist outfitter section, tourist accommodations, and only consider for discussion the other three sectors: Airbnb, bed and breakfast, and hotels. So having said that, and also to have a sort of rational way to work through this discussion, I'm going to sort of segment it up into trying to give a clear direction to council by some exclusions and some inclusions, and ultimately it might be a total exclusion if that's the direction, but whittle it down so that we can proceed with the discussion. Any comments on that proposal? Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I agree for the most part. I think it's very complicated with the tourist camps and the fact that there's half of them are not within the municipality and they would not be eligible, and I think we have to keep it fair, the competition fair. I would like to see it only for hotels and exclude the B&Bs and the Airbnbs simply because they're little guys, and I think we should try to support the small businesses that we have in town.
Okay, so that's good. We'll try and keep the discussion at this stage to what sectors, if that's okay, unless anybody objects. Councillor Bath.
Yeah, my concern has always been that to bring in the tourist operators, it created a very, very uneven playing field, because we have tourist operators who are very close to the municipality. They wouldn't be included in what. So I like the idea of segregating it like this. As far as B&Bs, I believe they should be included, absolutely, because they are a competition to the hotels, who we are now rolling into the tax basis, so they should be included. And as a hostel, I have mixed feelings whether it can or it can't, or should or shouldn't be. But certainly the ones you've mentioned, I would certainly agree with: hotels, hostel, and B&Bs.
Yeah, and keep in mind, what I'm suggesting is get through the business by exclusion, hard exclusion first. It doesn't mean to say that everybody else is included. It means will be considered for inclusion, so there can be a discussion on it. Councillor Fallon?
No, I agree with Councillor Bath for the most part from the last time that we brought this forward, so that's where I stand on it.
I'll just go around the table, Councillor.
I also agree with that.
Councillor Lego.
So do I.
I don't know how we'll proceed, but I'm going to carry on with the discussion. The first direction to staff then is to exclude the tourist, can you help me with the definition? The tourist campground sectors. Does that make sense? Keeping in mind we're looking at hotels, Airbnbs, bed and breakfasts, and hostel, that helps you exclude everybody else that's not in those three sectors, okay? So as far as the MAT tax is concerned, from here on in, the discussion excludes them. They will not be considered for the MAT tax. Is that, can I get an assent to that will be when we finalize this direction, that'll be the direction? I think I had it. Okay, good. So moving on from there, we'll go to the next sector. And what I'm suggesting at this time is that we don't say we're including them all, but we say we're considering them for inclusion. And I'd like staff just to do a little bit more work on, now that we've given you that much direction, it makes it, I think, it decomplexifies I think we're down to four or five, one institution, 4 companies, and then the myriad Airbnbs, bed and breakfasts, which I don't know. It would be good if staff report could come back and just clearly itemize those. And I'm going to suggest what the impact, just an estimate of an impact of a 4% MAT to 3%, 2%, 1% from each of those sectors. But I also think that one of those sectors, which is a non-private sector agency, we need to do a bit of consultation with, because the tax model will work differently for them, because a tax on a hotel, it will be, as it's intended, it will just be charged to the visitor to the hotel, and it'll appear as it does on my bill when I go to Toronto or Niagara Falls or wherever it is, they just municipal accommodation tax or whatever they call it there, and I pay the bill. For the non-private sector, I believe they're funded on a per night, per day basis, and what we'd in fact be doing is reducing their budget for that part by 4% unless they could renegotiate a contract with their funder. That's my understanding. But don't take that as that's why I think we need to do a further consultation with that non-private sector to determine that and see how it would impact them, and make sure we're moving ahead in an appropriate manner there. As far as the Airbnbs and B&Bs, I think, Councillor Timpson, I'm just going to suggest we're not saying they're excluded or included, they're still being considered, and just see how many there are, what the impact is, and have that report come back to council. Would that be enough direction to council at this, to staff at this time? Do you want to read something back to me? Yeah, thanks, Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, that the draft motion reads that council directs staff as follows respecting the municipal accommodation tax. Bullet 1, exclude tourist camps, tourist outfitters and campgrounds. Consider for inclusion, bullet 2, consider for inclusion all other categories of transient accommodation. Bullet 3, provide revenue projections based on a 2%, 3%, and 4% municipal accommodation tax. And bullet 4, undertake further research on the implication of non-private sector accommodations being impacted by the municipal accommodation tax.
Fair enough. I think I said 1, 2, 3, 4. I envisioned for percents. I envisioned a pretty simple spreadsheet. So,
1% as well.
I did say it, but I mean, it might be more than is necessary. It'll just be another column in your spreadsheet. I don't think it's any effort. Is council okay with that as a direction to staff? And I think from that next report, and I would ask that next report to be in, say, September. Is 2 months? Because looking at implementation, maybe aiming for January 2021. We're in 2020. 20. Where are we now? 2020. Thanks. January 20. Just aiming as a soft target, making sure we're doing this, doing a good job of getting there. So would September be long enough to do that report? And you can let us know if you need a bit more time. I think some of the consultation there might take a bit of time to set up. Councillor Timpson.
Just a question that I'd like to pose to the Chamber of Commerce folks who are here. It seems to be a year. When did this come to us? About a year ago? About a year ago. And there was some discussion that the Chamber would discuss with the hotels and the members how they would utilize the revenue, the 50% that would go to
Council-
yours. Did anything ever come
Councillor
of that?
Simpson, sorry, that's premature. The municipality, we haven't decided who the partner would be on that.
No, they
I
did.
don't believe we
well,
have.
But
CIO,
that was a discussion that they
CIO.
would report.
We did meet with the Chamber of Commerce, which precipitated this survey that they did. Our Treasurer Christie and myself met with the Chamber, and we discussed different ways that we could set up this arm's length organization, whether it be the Chamber. We set up a non-for-profit specifically for that. We're not there yet. But we're working on how that would be done. But the intention, as far as management is concerned, is that they would have to, at the end of every year, whatever proceeds we receive through the MAT tax, 50% of that would be allocated through the budget for tourism-related things through the organization that's taking care of that half. And they would have to submit a budget to the municipality for kind of prior approval to make sure, because we're still the stewardships of this money, to make sure that they're using it for what the intended purpose is. And then they would use the monies and then provide a financial statement or a statement to the municipality at year end to indicate where the monies actually went and
Okay.
report back. So that's where we're moving with
Okay,
that.
I just wanted to be sure that discussion had taken place.
It is taking place. Yep.
Okay.
All right, can I, no further, I'll call the vote on that, on that motion, is it? A motion for direction to staff. Did anybody need it read another time? No? All in favor? Carried. Item 7.4, Community Transportation Grant Program. I'll just pause for a moment here. You're welcome to stay.
Please stay. Go on, Steve, stay.
Item 7.4, Community Transportation Grant Program. The council authorizes the passing of bylaw number 64-19, being a bylaw to authorize and direct the mayor and the clerk to execute a payment transfer agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Sioux and the Queen, as represented by the Minister of Transportation for the province of Ontario. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Lego. Discussion, starting with Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, this is 760,000 over 5 years, which is what, 60,000, 70,000 each year, or, no,
How about 150?
150 a year. Thank you. Does the municipality, will the municipality still be contributing, as we did last year, 21,000?
You mean, are we contributing next year, or?
Sure.
Sorry, excuse me. Thank you.
Is there some requirement that we do submit something?
Let's determine each budget year, is it not, CAO?
I'd like to refer that to staff because they worked on the applications
Okay.
and they knew what the implications are to the municipality.
To you, Mayor Lawrence, the Hub Transit has submitted a budget for the 5-year plan, and my understanding, I don't have it in front of me, I thought I had it with me, I didn't bring it, is in the budget, I believe there is an amount that's coming from the municipality in the amount of around 21,000, I believe, every year they put it in the budget.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, I don't have it ready.
They put it in their budget, and then it would have to be approved at
It
municipal.
has to be approved
Yeah.
every year, like every year we come through the budget process where council would have to make a determination on it. We do have reporting requirements that we have to do for this grant program, in which we would have to be submitting reports on where the money's being spent and what is occurring with the funds. It's not like we're just getting the money and then it goes. It's a program where, just as if we're doing a road or whatever, we have all the reporting requirements done. If council so determines, say next year not to support it, then that would have to be brought forward to the Community Transportation Grant Program and advise them on that, and then with effect of maintain.
I think and I'd just like to comment that I'd like to get clarification on that because it's my understanding that under this, we are agreeing to a partnership of a five-year partnership under this funding. And without the funding from the municipality, nobody's eligible. The municipality has to show that they support the transit.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Lego.
Do we have to do that through a bylaw instead of doing it per budget? Could we pass a bylaw for that?
Can we, so the question is, can we basically commit for the 5 years?
Through
The bylaw?
Yeah.
CAO?
Economic Development Manager is trying to say is by approving the grant application throughout the process, council's basically committed themselves to their portion to support this grant. So we can reaffirm this in a separate motion at budget time to say that this will be the allocation every year so that we're not revisiting it every budget year. If that's all, what do you think, Mr. Clerk? Yeah?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, yes, should council wish to confirm, further to supporting the initial grant application, council committed itself, but should council wish to further commit itself, a resolution or a bylaw can be passed to sort of confirm that commitment for the next 4 years. We're already into year one. My understanding is there'll be 4 more years.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, just to confirm, in the grant, that you're going to sign, it states in there you're already approving the contribution for the next 5 years. It's in the budget. So I don't know if you want to add that motion or not tonight.
If
No.
at budget time, we would be negating that.
The contract, and it would void.
Councillor Cassidy.
I thought we already had, from my recollection from budget time, that we already had a bylaw that put $10,000 into this transit. Would it just not be a bylaw amendment and then to up it and match our contribution and then?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lawrence, I would have to double check that bylaw, because I believe that bylaw is for the community transportation gas tax, not
Oh, okay.
the grant program. So, but my understanding is when you approve tonight, the bylaw to pass the agreement, in the agreement, attached to the agreement is a schedule, which is a budget, which states in the budget that the municipality is contributing X amount of dollars, and so I never, I don't know if you have that.
So we're committing tonight to do that for the next 4 years. We committed already in this budget year for the 31, actually, the 10 plus 21, I think.
Yeah.
So is council good with that? All right. So I will put the motion. We've read the motion. We've had a mover and a seconder. So all in favor? Carried. Strategic Economic Infrastructure Fund, Airport Water Systems. The council authorizes a funding application to the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation for $688,208 and FedNor for $688,208 under the Strategic Economic Infrastructure Programs to upgrade the booster pumping station at the municipal airport and expand water and sewer to the Bigwood property. I have a mover, please. Councillor Fenlon, seconded by Councillor Lego. Discussion, starting with Councillor Timpson.
Sorry, which one are we at?
We're at 7.6.
If I put my hand up for that? Okay. I guess I was just concerned we're asking for $152,000 for 2020 budget. Will this come from land sales, or where will this come from? We have a land reserve, I believe.
Treasurer, see you.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lawrence, that would be determined by council, whether it would come from a land sale, or whether or not it would be capital that is put forward due to the importance of the infrastructure upgrade.
Okay.
Could we use, just a question here, since we're developing land, our own land, we have the land development reserve fund that the auditor referred to earlier. Could we use money from that reserve fund, where we sold land, and now this is to develop land?
Correct?
That would be an appropriate use of that?
Yes,
reserve?
correct.
Okay, thanks. I'm not saying that's what we're doing, it was just a question. Further discussion, Councillor Bath?
Just a question on the, as everybody knows, I'm not very pleased about tapping into next year's budget before we get there. So I'm just curious if we couldn't actually allocate this from the reserve funds we have already in land, rather than carry it forward.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. Like I say, it's the reason I deferred it to 2020 was because this would not be approved prior to 2020 based on the federal election. I have consulted with the northern agents for both FEDNOR and NOHFC. They support the project moving forward, but we know with the election. So where the money comes from, it's here nor there then.
We can decide at that time. We won't get if we get these grants, it won't be effective until next year, for
That's
sure.
correct.
Okay.
Further discussion, Council? Councillor Timpson?
So if we didn't sell the land, we have the land reserve that we could call on if necessary.
Well, yeah.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, unless I have a proposal
Yeah.
on the other end of this strategic infrastructure, the reason why we're doing it, we have to have a business case. So here nor there, there has to be some agreement that we're doing this for future development and proof of future development.
Councillor Lego?
This is also including the water booster for the airport. So is there funding for that as well?
Right there,
Okay, so
it's
that's what you're asking.
incorporated. Yeah, for the fire suppression, et cetera.
That needs to be done.
So this is the funding that would upgrade all the lines that go to the airport now and the booster pumping station. It would satisfy requirements at the airport for infrastructure to bring it right up to fire capacity, and for future expansion on building on those other industrial lots that are there, and allow us to go across to Bigwood. And included in this is the part that goes under the highway to get to Bigwood.
Not with this, there's an additional,
Okay.
and because yes, it is.
Okay, so further discussion? If not, all in favor? Carried. Item 7.7, FCM Green Municipal Fund, that Council authorizes a funding application to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund for $350,000 to conduct a feasibility study to assess the technical and financial feasibility to construct an eco-village in the municipality of Sioux Lookout as a pilot project for Northern Ontario. Moved by Councillor Cassidy, seconded by Councillor Timpson. And discussion, Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I just want to make sure or find out to what extent are we looking at sustainability and eco-village. All I see in the report is biomass and, construction. Would we be looking at solar? Would we be looking at sustainable water, wastewater systems that rotate around and so on?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. The purpose of the feasibility is that FEDNOR has had pre-approved, not pre-approved, but want to fund Kenora District Services Board submitted an application to FEDNOR in partnership with some of these partners, and they came back saying we support the project, but we'd like to have a feasibility conducted first. So because in their plan through FEDNOR, it was every unit was going to have some different component to sustainability. So that would be a showcase of different systems, not specifically one system. Like, so there can be solar panels right in the walls. There could be, all different types of prototypes, and that's what they have to study to show what type of technologies would be able to be implemented into the village, eco-village. So the only reason why we're making this application is under the Federation of Canadian Municipalities that fund these types of feasibility studies, and also commit to, if the feasibility is successful, they also will allow you to go immediately into a pilot project And that's what the partners have come to us. The only people that can apply to Federation of Canadian Municipalities are municipalities. So we are the conduit to the funding, but the partners have raised their own money, and we've raised some funding through NOHFC, a small amount of it, 31.5, and that so that they can proceed. And that Kenora District Services Board is partnered with Rainy River, Manitoulin, and Sault Ste. Marie, and this is a model for Northern Ontario.
Thank you.
Further discussion, council? All in favor? Carried. Innovation Station. The council supports a Phase 2 application to the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation under the Community Capacity Building Initiatives Program. Moved by Councillor Bath, seconded by Councillor Fenelon. Discussion? Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I wonder if we could have some clarification for the 33,000. Like, what are we purchasing? I know there was a request for 30,000 for the renovations that was going to come out of rent. This is different, obviously. And is this for like equipment? I think there's an incubator. That was the name of the thing. I don't know what an incubator is doing in a computer room, but is it for equipment or just what? And is it going to be located up in the museum, or is it going to be on that first floor?
It's the partners have put an application forward for strategic infrastructure for doing research, and so equipment. They were talking about 3D printers, these types of items that would be useful in some of the projects. We've already confirmed our component of it, and the balance is being supported by the funders.
So, like modern technology, basically.
That's
what
correct.
it's for. Okay.
And communications, so that we communicate with the institutions
Mm-hmm. And where will it be located?
at the train station,
First floor or upstairs?
right, first floor.
Where your office is right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Lego.
So just to clarify, our contribution is taken care of?
Yes.
And, because it just says municipality and then partnership. So
Yeah.
that $33,000
Yeah,
is sort of,
Sulcoat First Nation Health Authority and Northwest Health Unit have also contributed finances.
I just didn't want to,
Is there am I missing something there?
No, you're fine, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Further questions, council? All in favor? Carried. Amendment to agreement with Drayton Disposal Services for blue box materials collection and disposition, I believe. Deposition? Disposition, I would. Clerk? Sorry, I'm asking for help with the wording there.
I will refer to the Public Works Manager. He's more familiar with the contract.
Okay. Deposition, okay?
Which one are we on now?
Deposit.
Blue box.
That council authorizes the passing of bylaw number 6319, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to extend the term and amend the conditions of an agreement between
Extended.
Sulcoat and Drayton Disposal Services for the provision of residential recycling collection, processing, and marketing per bylaw 46-14. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Bath. Discussion. Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, are we to understand that Drayton Disposal will not be doing this after 1 year, or why are we not going for a 5-year at this point?
Public Works Manager.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, the existing agreement was for 5 years with an offer to extend for a 6th year. I met with Drayton Disposal Services and asked if they were willing to entertain the 6th year, and they said they were. So there's no need to go to market right now to try to get another agreement. That would happen this year, or sorry, next year, 2020.
Oh, okay.
We have to discuss the new talks in probably January 2020 and find out if Drayton Disposal wants to enter into another agreement or not. This is not a good time to enter into long-term agreements with legislation that's coming through the Waste Free Ontario Act. If Drayton Disposal Services does not want to enter into another contract after this 1-year extension, I don't know where municipalities are looking at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, discussion, council? All in favor? Carried. Silica, item 7.11, Silica wastewater treatment plant upgrade, dechlorination or alternate disinfection process. The council provides direction in determining a design option, option number 1 or option number 2, to upgrade the Silica wastewater treatment plant to meet the federal wastewater system's effluent regulation for total residual chlorine concentration. And we'll just fill in the blank once we get there. So may I have a mover, please? Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. And I think I'll just put the Public Works Manager on. You've given us two options. I've read the report. I'm sure Council's read the report. Help us.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, there's been extensive discussion. Consultant, our current operating authority, Northern Waterworks Incorporated, and myself, as to the outcome of the option study report prepared by RVA. And although initially it was discussed that it would be anticipated that the preferred option would be to dechlorinate, to continue disinfection with chlorination and then dechlorinate. Through the discussions and input from Northern Waterworks compliance coordinator, who compiled a table that was appended for basically non-cost implication arguments as to why we should proceed with UV. So the second discussion through conference call, the decision somewhat, or not the decision, the preferred option somewhat swayed more towards UV disinfection.
So
The complication here is a substantially higher initial capital cost to implement this.
yeah, it was I'm sorry, my memory, $350,000 higher or so, capital cost, but the operational was very similar. Operational cost is similar in both.
The 15-year forecasted operational and maintenance costs are similar to the two options. It's the initial capital investment that creates the largest difference between the two options from a financial perspective.
And what would make us prefer UV to chlorine at that higher capital cost?
The simplicity of the process, I think, is the most attractive option or reasoning. To continue with chlorination, the consultant has reviewed our existing chlorination system and deemed it to be a good working order and could effectively function for another 15 years. However, then we would have to maintain chlorine gas at the facility. And then to dechlorinate, we have to introduce an additional chemical feed system of sodium bisulfate was the preferred option to then dechlorinate. So now we're dealing with two chemicals. It also introduces the addition of monitoring, which would be required by UV. So with chlorination for disinfection, we're monitoring the amount of chlorine that's injected based on the volume and so on and so forth. And then we're injecting sodium bisulfate after the chlorine's had enough contact time to kill the bacteria. We have to monitor the amount of sodium bisulfate that's injected based on sensors that tell us that we're effectively meeting the criteria for E. coli parameters. So the complication there is monitoring those parameters, as well as the potential for an exceedance in not dechlorinating effectively, and then we're in exceedance of the 0.02 milligram per liter of effluent discharge in the lake if for whatever reason something happens between the sensors and the dosing and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit more complicated in that respect. It involves the handling of chemicals and the purchase of chemicals, which would be not a preferred option to just a single unit concept. So the argument was presented mostly that way from an operational perspective. It would probably be less work for NWY to just monitor a UV system versus the two chemical feed systems. There was some discussion that's not in the report around the fact that this sodium bisulfate injection system, there's a risk of it not working very well on cold temperatures, and it is very underground. But I see the consultant had it in the second report. It looks like he has a heat trace system involved in it to try to alleviate that. The other complication, or potential complication, with chemical injection for dechlorination is the fact that we have to install underground piping, and there is no bedrock in that area. We have to encourage geotechnical investigation less, it's less cost, however, it would be more difficult to maintain, implement, and monitor.
In terms of expansion of the sewage treatment plant, if in the coming few years, next few years, 5 years, say we identify a need to expand the sewage treatment plant, which system, if either would adapt better to that?
So, both systems were in the report calibrated to the maximum peak flow of 9,000 some cubic meters a day, and to the maximum flow right now to 800 cubic meters a day. And then there was also some calculations made because the existing chlorine contact chamber, or sorry, I'm going to rephrase that. The third CTU was considered in the resizing of the chemical feed systems, but what they're saying that when they implement right now would be to the maximum capacity we have right now, but it would be able to handle the future capacity of a third CTU. Well, 13,000 cubic meters a day, I think it was rated to the maximum, which would be the peak flow of the third CTU.
Council? Councilor Tipton?
Yeah, so with the UV system, you don't need chlorine, or does,
Through your Mayor Lawrence, that's correct. So
Yeah.
the UV system eliminates chlorination, and then it eliminates dechlorination. So you're eliminating two chemicals. Not to say that UV wouldn't have its own problems. For example, the unit that they quoted for $190,000 or $200,000, it doesn't self-clean. There are more expensive models that clean themselves. These would not clean. And considering you're disinfecting effluent, not water, like at the water treatment plant, there's a potential here for it to require cleaning on a consistent basis. But in order to do that, you would then implement the standby redundant unit, and then you pull that unit up and you clean it for change walls and so on and so forth.
how much is the extra, how much is the UV unit that would not need cleaning? How much more would it cost us?
I couldn't answer that for you at this time.
Is it worth even looking at that? Is it worth looking at it, or is it?
It wasn't recommended by the consultant, so I'm sorry I can't speak to that. I just know that it was referenced that this unit was not a self-cleaning type.
Okay.
It was never brought forward from the consultant that also.
Council, further questions? Councilor Fallon?
In the end, the ministries are going to push us to do something, are they not?
Through your Mayor Lawrence, in the end, we have to do something. So
Yeah.
we have to meet the effluent level of only 0.02 milligrams per liter by January 1st, 2021. We have to meet that. Whether we
Yeah.
dechlorinate or do UV, what the argument was for UV that was presented by NWI's compliance coordinator was very privy to all the regulations and how the government potential future is that what he's saying is there is the potential in the future for them to now say that, okay, sodium bisulfate isn't that great to be in the effluent to going out the lake either, so now let's get rid of the sodium bisulfate that you've injected in there and get rid of the chlorine. Whereas they're saying that's why the government is somewhat saying or pushing for recommending that you go to UV right from the beginning because it would eliminate the potential for that.
So would we not be better off to try and find something to support us and start a plan of replacement of the water treatment plant to bring us up to get us a little more capacity to deal with the growth that we have going on right now? Because you got 2 or 3 items there that are coming together that are going to happen in the future.
To you, Mayor Lawrence, that's correct. So what I tried to represent in the end is that if the council was to agree with recommendation from NWI and myself that UV would be the way to go to disinfect and eliminate chlorine, there's just the additional expense in there. And so what I tried to state was if you agree to that additional expense at this time, it could be not too far off in the distant future that we would be incurring potentially $3 to $4 million to expand the place to accommodate the increased flows. However, the UV unit or dechlorination unit, whatever you choose, would be constructed as such that it would be able to handle that expansion. So all I'm trying to say there is if you choose the more expensive option now, then there's also potential for more expenses not in the not too far distant expansion. That, yeah. One other thing that I didn't elaborate too much on here is basically on dechlorination or alternate disinfection. But when the Ministry of the Environment, MECP, opens up our current environmental compliance approval, not only are they changing our target for chlorine, saying we can't, they're implementing other parameters, and it's in the full report there. But so now we have to monitor pH, phosphorus. It allows them to implement new stringent parameters that aren't essentially in our environmental compliance approval that was put together in 1992.
Yeah.
And hence that was one recommendation for the alkalinity adjustment system, because without it, we can't really control fluctuations and meet all those other parameters that are required, not just the chlorine.
Yeah.
Councilor Lamb.
Yeah, I certainly think that going to the UV is the way to go. It certainly is more expensive, less chemicals, and the chance of, especially when you have dual chemicals, and certainly the government and environmentalists are going to be coming down on dumping chemicals in the lakes, which probably should be. One of the concerns that I read in the report, which is kind of interesting, was that the partial flume hasn't been working correctly, and they identified that, and I'm wondering what that does to our, so probably a little off topic, but I'm wondering what that does to our life of the plant, or do we even know?
Yeah, so through you, Mayor Lawrence, we've recently had a technician come and install the instrument. What they're telling us is the correct location. So they're saying it was installed in the incorrect location since the inception of the plant. We have noticed an increase in flow in the last week or so that has been monitoring. However, we've also received some substantial rainfall in the last week that is probably contributing to the increased flows. And another anomaly is that the probe could not be zeroed because it wouldn't zero itself unless we stopped all the flow going through the flue. And they tried to put in a weird stop and it wouldn't work, so we have to do a bypass. So although right now it is indicating that our flows are higher, and yes, we are probably above the average right now, 74% capacity. So that does initiate potentially accelerating the discussion for expansion. However, both NWI and the consultant did discuss this stress test, and they say a lot of municipalities do it. What it is, it's a physical load on the plant where you disprove the initial design capacity of it when the Ministry of the Environment gated that capacity back in 1990. It's very common, and you can get between 10 and 20% additional capacity doing a stress test, and what that does, I guess, is it buys you that 3 to 4 years time to implement your expansion.
Just to be clear, something you said earlier, either the UV system or the chlorine system can be, you said something about there may be additional costs in the future. That was for both systems in terms of expansion.
I believe that both systems would be sized adequately to handle the third CTU. That was a consideration in the RFP that had to be considered in the design, that a third CTU is not too far from the distant future in any design concept at this time, and system implementation would be able to handle those increased flows. There was discussion around the UV staying at 15 years' time, if that's the useful life of either system, that the UV system would probably be a higher cost to upgrade or replace in 15 years versus upgrading the chemical feed system for the SBS dechlorination. That was one discussion.
Councilor Fallon?
On another note, when we did 7th Avenue, there was talk about the main line going to the wastewater treatment plant that was undersized.
Through Mayor, what we did with the 7th Avenue project, what I think you're referring to is we twinned the force main from Front Street to the outfall where the force main. So 98% of all our effluent currently flows to Robert Street lift station, and then from there it's pumped up to the sewage treatment plant. So what the 7th Avenue project did was we twinned the force main from Front Street all the way to King Street. So we eliminated a single 12-inch line there that was an issue, and the
Yeah.
is the original that was back in whenever they built the plant before they moved it to the new one. That was never changed. So in the current environmental compliance approval for the sewage treatment plant, it states that the discharge line is supposed to be 400 millimeter PVC, and we found out when it collapsed on us 2 years ago that it's 12-inch concrete.
Yeah.
Now that's undersized for an addition of a CTU. So that's an additional considered cost that would be added. And at that time, it would be ideal for us to negotiate the landlord that it currently goes to move the eastern area of this yard there and get it over. But yes, that is something that we can consider expansion of the discharge line would have to be upsized to a
Sorry, user, will this be paid for through user fees?
through you, Mayor Lawrence, in the financial implication part of the report, I referred to the treasurer. I can't speak to the treasurer and financials, but there's no funding currently available for this project. I don't think there's any funding. There would be no funding that we could get that would be required to implement this in the time that's required. So we either have to do, there's a fairly decent balance in the utility reserve fund, although I don't think the council would want to exhaust it, but it could be a contribution to it. But I think, in my opinion, we would look at increasing the help obviously for the customers. Another additional point could be that I believe as of this year, the plant itself, the debenture for the financing the plant is done. So there's additional revenue there potentially. Although our asset management plan states that when a loan expires like that, the money should continue to flow into the utility reserve fund, for example. But this would be similar. I mean, you're either pulling more from the fund or whatever, but there's the opportunity there for some additional surplus revenue that's not expensed because that loan is
Councilor Bath?
It's probably in the report and I haven't read it because everything else is in here. But the 0.02 milligrams, what's the date do we have to meet that? Or are we already overdue?
Well, no, we have to meet it, and it's, sorry, we have to meet it. It's January 1st, 2021. So what we are here is we did an option study. We have a recommendation for an option. I need a decision from council as to which option they would prefer based on mostly on the capital component of it. We have to then go back to the consultant and get a design completed this summer and start the application to the MOE for the ECA amendment. And then this needs to be constructed next summer, so it's commissioned in September, October of 2020, so that we meet the regulation deadline of January 1st, 2021. I would prefer they would use December 31st, 2020. It makes it sound more urgent. January 1st, 2021 to me makes it sound like you got extra time, but you don't.
Just one more. With the lack of trust in our flows because of the partial meters, and the fact that we have to have this done, we're kind of getting forced into a corner. You know, where if we need a new plant because our flows are too high, we don't want to be spending a lot of money doing something ahead of time. So maybe the UV, even though it would be the best option if we had a plant that was going to carry us for several years, it may not be the best option if our plant's going to be undersized within a year or so.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, our plant is not undersized. When it was constructed, everything is in the ground for a third CTU.
Okay.
It's there. The piping's there. It's underground. It's a matter of constructing it,
Okay.
which is a fairly substantial undertaking. But everything is there to install a third CTU
Okay.
plant. It's a matter of constructing it.
With the elimination of chlorine, there are other parameters that have to be controlled, pH being one. Do you still have the ability to control that without limiting yourself by taking all the chemicals out?
So the other parameters that are monitored would still be required. So the second component of the project was done through what they call a process optimization study. And what they did is when they looked at the plant data, they saw a bunch of fluctuations and spikes, and they said, how are we supposed to recommend something to you when it looks like you're not controlling certain parameters that need to be controlled? So they did a process optimization study, which involves like a desktop software where they input all the parameters and then they tell you what your exceedances are and what you need to do to lower your fluctuations. And the outcome of that
is going to be controlled by chemicals, and by getting chlorine, are you limiting your options by having no chlorine?
No, through Mayor Stone, I don't believe that the chlorine is strictly for disinfection, it's not for any other parameter that we're trying to do.
Sometimes you get intended consequences from the disinfection being, well, with chlorine, you get the higher acidity from it.
So all those parameters you're speaking of are before the chlorine injection process.
Good. Council? So if there's no further questions, staff needs direction on this option 1 or option 2, chlorine or DB, to proceed to the next phase. Yeah, and we're not approving the construction or whatever, we're approving just which option that staff is going to move forward and to come back with another, when would you be reporting back to council? With what?
Through Mayor Lawrence, it wouldn't necessarily be a report. The report would be, probably the next time the report would come back to council was when the consultant completed the design, not at that time, and he's going to contend with the construction, and at that time it would come back to council for their approval of the construction to a contractor to construct the process. So right now, what I'm asking council for is their decision to say option 1 or option 2, saying the additional $360,000 for UV does not outweigh the other option. And then I would go back to the consultant tomorrow and say, this is what councils are generally going to do, and they would initiate the design process for that process.
Clerk, which option, I'm going to start with UV, which option was UV, number 2?
Number 1.
Number 1. So it was number 3 or it was number,
Through Mayor Lawrence, I apologize because my options do not correlate to the options in the report. So to me, option 1 should be option 1, but you being the report is option 3, I thought that would be confusing. So
well, it was confusing.
because option 1 is what NWI and
Yeah.
I made that option 1 was contrary to the option, which doesn't coincide with the option, but that is slated within the report itself.
All right, so council, I'm going to go ahead with calling the vote on the motion, and I'm going to insert option 1, UV. If that's defeated, then we'll go to option 2, chlorine. If that's defeated, I'm not sure where we're going. So we'll start with the motion reading option 1. All in favor? Carried.
That was easy.
I think that concludes items requiring separate discussion. Got our delegation, so we're on to bylaws. How long are they tonight? Bylaw number 6319, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to extend the term and amend the conditions of an agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Sulacote and Drain Disposal Services for the provision of residential recycling collection, processing, and marketing as per bylaw number 46-14. Moved by, can I do these collectively? And bylaw number 64-19, being a bylaw to authorize the director or clerk to execute a payment transfer agreement between the municipality of Sulacote and Ontario as represented by the Minister of Transportation for the province of Ontario Community Transportation Grant Program. That bylaws number 6319 and 6419 be read first, second, and third time and passed. Moved by Councilor Bath, seconded by Councilor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. Notice of motion to reconsider outside resolutions. Support to KDSB, we need to develop housing programs and services in the District of Kenora to address the high rates of homelessness, poverty, emissions, and mental health crisis by providing safe spaces. Whereas communities in the District of Kenora are experiencing alarmingly growing rates of homelessness and poverty, and whereas communities in the District of Kenora are witnessing a growing mental health and addictions crisis resulting in communities losing community members and to addictions and suicide. And whereas the lack of housing and necessary support facilities has created a housing crisis for the District of Kenora. And whereas in the absence of adequate housing and support facilities, Indigenous people living, visiting, or residing in opposite communities in the District of Kenora are left vulnerable, homeless, and many get cycled through the policing justice system. Now therefore be it resolved that Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Sulacote requests that the Government of Canada provide communities of the District of Kenora the necessary resources to address the housing and homelessness crisis, further resolved that the Council of the Corporation of Municipal Sewardale supports Northern Services Board application under the Reaching Home program to become a designated community. Moved by Councilor Lego, seconded by Councilor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. And we're ready to move into closed session. So call the motion and we'll take a 5-minute recess.
What happened to council comments?
Did I miss it?
It's not on here. Yeah. I don't know what happened.
I wondered about that too, but I don't know, it must be coming after.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, that was an oversight on my part. My apologies.
Okay. It does usually come here, does it, before we go into closed session? Yeah. Are we allowed to amend the agenda? Thanks, Councilor. I just assumed it was going to come next, but it was in my mind.
Yeah.
Good. So item, how do you want me to number it, clerk?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, this will become item 13.
13, very good. Item 13. Councilor comments. We'll go around the table starting with Councilor Dixon. Councilor Ruffles.
Starting with me?
Yeah, Councilor Salvo's not here tonight, so.
Oh, okay.
Going to you first.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lois.
Okay. Yeah, I've not that busy, but I attended two library board meetings actually. One regular one, and we are looking for new people on the board. And we had a strategic planning meeting as well. I've done some work with members of the Environment Committee on the trade fair booth that we're trying to that we are going to be participating in, and we're going to focus on hazardous waste disposal, electronic disposal, recycling, and climate change adaptation. Basically, just a education booth as per our terms of reference, and we're going to have a draw for a food recycler. So that's the Environment Committee. Attended the Hydro Board, along with everyone else, and Truth and Reconciliation Committee on Monday, and that was pretty well it for me.
Thank you, Councilor Bass.
I was kind of glad that it was missing because I thought, holy smokes, I forgot to look what I had done. And it hasn't been very much, obviously. I had a couple of interesting comments from citizens, and one young fellow was very interested in setting up a composting operation. And I said, you need to talk to the Environment Committee, so I'll carry on and talk to him a little more. Attended the Hydro EGM with two hats, of course. And PACE meetings we haven't had a PACE meeting this summer, or recently in the last month. The new director started on Monday, so we will have our next meeting in August. We'll get to meet her a little more thoroughly, and that's about it for me.
Thank you, Councilor Ruffles.
That's an advisory meeting, and I guess one of the biggest things that come out was we got the form to send out to the public for comments back on a new drop-in center or something like that. So I haven't heard too much from the public about it. We put out paper around 5 Mile Corner and at the restaurant downtown, stuff like that. And that's about it for me. Well, I had a community of adjustment meeting last night.
It's been a light month for me. All my committees are on hiatus or haven't started yet. But I attended the Hydro Board meeting, and I'm hoping to be working on recruiting, trying to get some more people involved in the Rec Committee. That will be starting shortly, so we need a few more members.
Special council meeting on July 9th for Hydro. Received confirmation, just be sitting on the board for the whole day. So, good. Yes. Unfortunately, the next meeting is next week, and I'm on vacation. But I will attend the August 29th
at the Northwest Cemetery. Moving ahead to try and get some commemoration there. Went out to the official launch of the Lasso Fire Department with Councilor Fallon, and that went very well. It was the Mayor of St. Catharines came up, they donated the fire chief, his fire chief, so Robbie, our fire chief was there. It was a big event, and it looks like good cooperation between the two fire departments here. I had a meeting with Grand Chief Fiddler in Thunder Bay, went through the 10 different items. It was sort of the first sit-down meeting I had, the formal sit-down, just Grand Chief and myself. He had a senior staff with him, so I was invited quite a bit. Went through many of our challenges and opportunities. Parish Nan had a big presence in Silico. Sioux Hydro meeting, Sioux North High graduation ceremony took place. I think there were 650 people in the gymnasium, new gymnasium. Wonderful event. Lots of. Did that just happen 3 weeks ago? Have I got this wrong? Yeah, lots of. It's a great event. Many people came. More graduates from Sioux North this year than we ever had. I'm sure the bullet kept as well as we read all about it. Lions Club Canada Day celebrations. The Lions Club did their usual thing at the town beach, and there was a nice celebration there. They did a great job. You know, at the beginning I thought, oh, there's not going to be too many people here, but then kept on coming and coming. And survey I counted, and it just happens to be Canada's 152nd birthday, and the Althea George cake in the end sliced up into 152 pieces. And there were still some people looking for cake, so it was good turnout. Kudos to the Lions Club. Had a meeting with the credit union manager from Dryden, asked me about staff recruitment, and just having a hard time not getting housing for staff, but recruiting staff, as are many agencies in Sioux. And they didn't have to do with housing. It was just getting people to apply. I asked her what the salary was, and I said, I'm in the department. Emergency control group meeting, I attended each one of those. CA went through that with the fire evacuees. I've had many staff, and kudos to staff. I think the staff have done an excellent job, and I don't know if it would come up anywhere else. The chief and the council from QA were attending a meeting. I wasn't at it, but I heard that they had high compliments for Sioux County and people being treated here. And we really are having, it's a good relationship, and as the amount of untoward incidences are minimal. It's gone very well. And I think that speaks to Sioux County itself and the people of Sioux County. Good to hear. Rotary dinner for the, it was Rotary did an international exchange with India, and so four people from our Rotary Club went to India, and this is the return visit. 4 couples came from India. They're all Rotarians, and all quite well off. Some of them wanted to say, look, it was an eye doctor and a few other things. Once he learned about Sioux County, well, we can come and we can help. We can do these things. So they're enthusiastic. It was a really nice event. Good to see the Rotary Club do that. And further, last night was the International Canoe Students. So they had, this is the 27th year for our Rotary Club to do the International Canoe Camp, and there's no other international camp in Canada like this one. This is, Sioux County is the one. It's phenomenal. So they've been doing it for 27 years, and each year there's roughly 15 to 18 students, I think, which means you do the math, and it's 400 international students. These are 18 to 20-year-olds that come here, learn about Sioux County, Northwestern Ontario, being ambassadors, because many, they give referrals, and other students come. So there was representatives Taiwan, Turkey, Switzerland, Denmark, France, Russia, Spain, Italy. It's really quite remarkable, and it's great food because they all, on the final night, they all have to bring a dish from their own country to cook it. So it's good. civics class, the CEO and I did another civics class. This is a grade 10 summer program where kids are doing sort of like a get ahead program in civics for grade 10. Slam sod turning, Council Fennel, I got there with you. Slam sod turning in Hudson for their training center and residents around in Hudson. Something else you did? Sorry? Slam sod turning in Hudson.
Yeah.
Oh, did you mention that?
No.
No. You do things you're not talking. It was a very positive event. Bob Bell was there and good turnout and really pleased to see that go ahead. You know, they're doing what we're asking, like they're providing accommodation for people who are moving into town as well as building facilities, so it's great. We had a friendship board meeting, which took a while to put together, but the economic development manager worked hard for months, if not a year, to put it together between election cycles in all the communities, including ours, the provincial election cycle. It was the first one in a year. We had the 4 chiefs from the 4 different communities, KI, Cat Lake, Slate Falls, and Lac Seul, and myself. And just a good catch-up meeting and commitments to do the next meeting in KI. And we had another KH meeting, and I had the TRC and the Police Services Board met this afternoon. And that's our second quarterly meeting for this year. Lots of good things happening. The mental health worker, crisis response worker, what's called, is having a significant impact, and she's here for at least another 8 months. Trying to get funding to extend that. They've increased foot patrols on Front Street, and that with the seniors, and seem to have a good drop-in relationship with the seniors, and that's going very well. And statistics are actually down. Council services were down significantly at this point year to date this year compared to last year, due to various things that reported. And that's my report. Thank you. We'll move into closed session. Motion to move into closed session at 7:40 p.m. Moved by Councilor Bass, seconded by Councilor Cassidy. All in favor?
Do we have 5 minutes?
And we'll take a
5 minutes.
5-minute break. 9 o'clock? Is that, or no, it's 10?
There's a number of procedural items that I want to read. I have a wager on what time the meeting starts.
You lost.
Although we know now why she won, because she tried to exclude us.
Oh.
So that means I'm next.
You know, we are in open session. You're talking about wagering on the council. So can we now ratify the motions?
Three Mayor Lawrence, yes. So the first part will be that council ratifies direction given to staff in closed session respecting the Bigwood Lake property. So that's the first one we need to pass.
We need a mover. Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Bath. And this, I'm sorry, this was,
This is just to ratify the direction given to staff in closed session respecting the Bigwood Lake property.
all in favor? Carried? He's delaying the meeting, Jackie.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. The second item to pass in open session is the motion respecting the appointment and receiving resignations from the various boards and committees.
Moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Fanlon, all in favor? Carried?
Thank you. And the third resolution would be that council appoints Councillor Cassidy and Mayor Lawrence to the Bigwood Lake Development Negotiating Committee.
Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Lego, all in favor? Carried?
Are they named in the resolution?
Yes.
So that's public.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, it is public information. We do our very best to notify appointees and those who weren't successful with their application as soon as possible after the council meeting, and certainly before the next edition of the newspaper, because it's typically printed in there. So we try to let folks know within 2 or 3 days of the council meeting.
Those are successful and unsuccessful at the same time, yeah.
Yes. We typically notify by email first because word does get out there pretty quickly, and then it's followed by a formal letter from the mayor.
Ready for a confirmatory bylaw? Number 6519, bylaw confirming the proceedings of municipality of Silico, June 19th, regular council meeting. You read it first, second, third time and passed. Moved by Councillor Timpson, seconded by Councillor Fanlon. All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn the regular council meeting of June 9th at 8:54 p.m. for precision. Moved by Councillor Timpson, seconded by Councillor Fanlon. All in favor? Carried. We are moved.